It's nice to be able to tell you a little bit about Siemens. I'm very proud to work for Siemens. Siemens is a grand old company, some 160-year-old company. And at the heart of this company has always been innovation and engineering. This is how we were formed, and this is how we proceed. So within the energy portfolio, we are working on a number of developments that really and truly change the world. And it's really exciting to be a part of an organization like this. Our company is perfectly adapted somehow to fit in with the megatrends of the world. And I'll talk to you about these megatrends that are really affecting our world and affecting Siemens as a company that is trying to sell into those megatrends. So I'm very happy to introduce you to Siemens. This is a part of my presentation, and hopefully to show you what a large global company can be for people like you as a possible career opportunity. I think Siemens is a very exciting place to work for, and I'm happy to show you what that's all about. I'd also like to tell you a little bit about what kinds of people we really need in this vast organization. We in Siemens have global presence in 190 countries. We have around 450,000 employees around the world. So if you want career opportunity, you can sit right in Siemens and basically go to any country you can imagine and do any job you can imagine that somehow fits in that world. So I'm very happy to show you a little bit about Siemens. So I start with the official slides. So if you look at the megatrends that are really affecting our world and our future, there are many interesting things going on that will have a profound effect on all of us, whether we're doing business in these areas or whether we're just a citizen of the world. These topics will have a profound effect on us all. One is the topic of urbanization. And what we mean by that is the population of the world has primarily been a rural population for many years. In 2007, we crossed that magic line where the center of gravity now is in urban centers. So cities have become kind of where it's at in terms of businesses like Siemens providing infrastructure and support for these growing cities. So if you look at this mega city concept, by the year 2030, 60% of the world will live in these mega cities. So for companies like Siemens, you're interested in electrification, transportation, water, all of those kinds of infrastructure topics, smart buildings, environmentally sensitive buildings, all of these things are important to the topic of urbanization. You also have demographic change. So our population is aging. There are all kinds of statistics here. You can read them yourselves, but the point is our population is steadily healthier, living longer, and it creates an entirely new dynamic in the care of our people, and especially the elderly that I'm, fast approaching. So we'll all be living longer, and you young people will have the opportunity to take good care of us in the future, I hope. So the business of taking care of the elderly and health concerns is very important. Also, just the demographics in terms of who is able to afford health care, or who even cares about health care. I mean, if you're in a third world country where you're worrying about food and water, you're probably not worried about having the latest MRI equipment. But as these emerging countries get richer and have a better ability to take care of their people, these trends in taking care of people begin to be very profound in terms of the types of products that Siemens sells, for example. climate change. You know, there's a lot of controversy about climate change, and I don't pretend to be an expert. But if you look at the statistics, it is a fact that, you know, maybe you dispute if you're on the other side of the political spectrum, but it is a fact that the global surface temperature has increased by a very small amount. I mean, but I suppose a scientist would say that 0.76 degrees centigrade over 2 centuries is quite a bit. If you extrapolate that, after a while it begins to get hot, right? So there's tremendous concern, of course, about CO2 emissions and greenhouse gases in general, and creating environmentally sensitive solutions that reduce these gases in our environment. And so Siemens is very engaged in, for all of its products, regardless of whether they're energy products or whether they are simply building technology products, to reduce the use of CO2, greenhouse gases, and create a more efficient energy production cycle. Globalization. This trend that I spoke a bit before, this trend of everything being interconnected. You know, the days are really gone when a country could exist as an island and not impact or be impacted by the countries around them, or countries even across the globe. We are truly a connected global society now, and things going on in the farthest reaches of the world have a direct impact, not just an indirect, but a direct impact on you sitting here. So you take all of these interesting events that are going on in the Middle East, and the tsunami in Japan, and all of these topics. You hear, if you're listening to the news, you hear that there will be and are already direct impacts on what's going on over there to your everyday life. I think if you filled up your car this week, you got that. So no longer can we ignore the impacts that we have on others as U.S. citizens, and hopefully no longer can they ignore the impact they may have on us through their decisions. So we have within Siemens, we have a so-called answer campaign. I hope you've seen our commercials, actually. We profess within Siemens to have answers to many of the world's pressing questions. And within Siemens, we are fundamentally divided into 3 sectors. There's the energy sector that I'm a part of. There is the industry sector that takes care of all types of industrial applications, and there's a healthcare sector. So all of our products are basically divided among these 3 sectors and have their own separate product portfolios. So I'll tell you a little bit about each one of these sectors. If you look at industry, industry is really a kind of a very interesting sector because it contains, frankly, a lot of kind of miscellaneous topics that all are somehow affecting industry. So for example, this is where our mobility solutions, so trains, high-speed trains, like the one that was about to come to Florida. Siemens was hoping to get that job. So, you know, this is a little sad for Siemens. But we do have a mobility division. It also takes care of all types of interesting industrial applications, like equipment for the U.S. Postal Service, for example, the mail sorting equipment and delivery equipment, and all kinds of factory industrialization. So factories that have highly sophisticated mechatronics to handle the actual production of product. We make many of those products to create efficient manufacturing. Okay, help me with assembly lines. I guess that's not the modern word, but sorry, my mind's slipping. But to create that, and from even from a software standpoint, for example, software is becoming a much more integral part of the products we sell. So a lot of embedded software to have intelligent controls is now part of what we do as a normal concept. So this general area of industrializing is a key area for Siemens. And these types of products are the ones that are working on things like water purification, like creating transportation in cities that are growing exponentially, that are taking care of things like building security. So there's a large building security organization that has very sophisticated technologies and sensoring and feedback and diagnostics and predictive capabilities and these kinds of things that are really taking care of buildings. And so this concept of smart building is something that's becoming very fitting to these megatrends that we've talked about. As these large mega cities are being built up, you now need the infrastructure in place to take care of all these people. So things like, smart lighting that actually senses how many people are in the building at any one time and where the lights need to be on and where they need to be off. Those types of things are the types of products that we're selling. Energy, which is my home, the energy sector takes care of the entire power conversion chain from digging, drilling for oil all the way through the generation of the electricity, through the transmission of the electricity over high voltage lines, into the last mile, as we call it, into the facility, into the building, into the home. So all of the products that get you from getting the fuel source out of the ground until you can turn your light on. Those are the products that are part of the energy division. So of course, this whole notion of cities becoming larger and the population in general growing, of course, this is a wonderful opportunity for the energy sector. Everybody needs electricity, and as emerging countries become wealthier and are able to afford electricity, then this is something we're very happy to provide. There are also a lot of very interesting technologies that allow the electricity to be transported over tremendous distances. So the source of the power production and the consumer can be hundreds and hundreds of miles apart now. So you can envision hubs within, let's say, more urban areas that can now feed electrical power to a small remote village that's a couple of hundred miles away in the jungle somewhere. So the capabilities that we have now to transport electricity are very exciting. So that's what this HVDC, that's high voltage transmission, can go long distances. We have several of these in China, for example, and they're going, I think, 500 or 600 kilometers between the source of the power and the consumer of the power. We're also getting very engaged in renewables, and by renewables you mean types of electrical generation that do not consume resources. So we're talking wind, we're talking solar, we're talking photovoltaic. Those types of areas are growing exponentially. Our wind business has just gone crazy. So especially in Europe and in the Midwest, a little bit in Florida, California, you see these windmills, very fancy windmills, quite expensive windmills popping up all over the place. This is a really growing business for us. We also are the #1 company in the world for offshore wind farms. So if you're ever off of the coast of Norway, for example, you will see a whole farm of these wind turbines that Siemens provides. So next time you're sailing around there, just peek out your window, you'll see them. Let me say one more thing about energy, just because of the Japan situation, for example. The nice thing about working for energy is that basically, because we can produce, we sell all types of power generation equipment, from nuclear power to renewables, gas, steam, So whatever your politics du jour is for the type of energy production that you want in your country, Siemens has a product. So it's very nice, because let's just, the nuclear business was beginning to re-emerge as a possibility for some countries that had gotten nervous after 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, for example. The scare had just begun to abate, and now we have this situation in Japan. So now the mood could go the other way, but you know, no surprise, our guy that's in charge of fossil power production, you know, was talking to the president of Tokyo Electric and saying, we can send you 4 gas turbines in just a few weeks if you'd like some. We really do have the capability to provide power of all these diverse types, depending on what the need is at that time. Yep. Healthcare. This is also an exciting area. The healthcare division aspires to really manage the life cycle of a patient. So from predictive analysis about what could be wrong with you, to diagnostics, both in vitro and in vivo, and into then, once you're diagnosed with whatever, to the various equipment that helps you with your treatment. So they cover that, really, that whole spectrum. And of course, with the mega trends of people being able to have affordable health care now, this is also great for us. So this is somehow a summary slide to segue into the value orientation of Siemens. The items on the right are our values as a company, and I think they're very fitting to your leadership agenda here. First of all is responsibility. This is somehow a foundation. I mean, if you're not doing responsible and ethical business, then you shouldn't be in business. But it's somehow easy to be swayed by influences and to be making the wrong decisions when you have gray areas that you need to overcome. You may have heard that Siemens was under quite a bit of heat due to compliance topics over the last few years. And this was somehow an atmosphere where Siemens had gone along with kind of the way it is, you know. So the way it is that you could give a despot in some Middle Eastern country a little bit of something on the side, because this is the way business got done. And it became clear a few years ago that this is simply not the way business should be done, and that it had to stop. And Siemens went through a complete transformation of really changing the entire culture of a huge corporation, that the only business we want is clean business, even if it means less business. And I think now, I know now, Siemens is considered a benchmark around the world for compliance and responsibility. And we are literally, you know, in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, we are, you know, the #1 in terms of that rating. So doing business, it's extremely important to be responsible. And it's not just about don't break the law. It's also about knowing what it means to do the right thing. You know, there's always shades of gray. And for a business to be successful, you need to have people that are thinking about what is the right thing in that circumstance. And these are the kinds of people we like to attract to our company. Performance. Performance is fundamental. You have to produce, no matter what your task is or your job or where you fit in this 405,000 population. It's important that you are committed to whatever your task is and that you are getting it done as required, on time, on budget, whatever the boundary conditions are of what you've been given. It's important for you to manage that. And that's the clear expectation. In a company like ours, you're a part of this huge web, this huge network, and there are so many interdependencies that if a certain department or a certain organization is not pulling their load properly, then it affects all of the people upstream and downstream from them. So very important to be consequent in meeting your commitments. One of my, Bob and I were just talking about it before, one of my strong beliefs when I came in as CIO was we had to really do something very drastic about project management. I felt that it was a weakness. I didn't feel it was a weakness. I think no one would have, my customers would have completely agreed with me. Project management was a weakness. Adherence to commitments was a weakness. And these are things that are just not tolerable and have to be mitigated. So we've spent a lot of time on project management skills within my organization and making sure that people have it's as much a mindset as it is a toolkit somehow. And we've worked a lot on the mindset aspect of it, that it's about doing everything humanly possible to get it done. And it doesn't mean that you're perfect, but it does mean that you're transparent about your imperfections. You don't hide problems. You don't shove them under the table and hope they go away. You don't be overly optimistic that, you know, life will be better tomorrow than it was the last 6 months on my project, so it's all of a sudden a miracle's going to occur. You need to, everything in the sunshine in terms of problems and opportunities, and being very determined that you're going to get it right. Last but not least, obviously, in this crowd is innovation. Innovation is the lifeblood of Siemens. Without innovative products and services, we would cease to survive. And it's not just about what's innovative today, it's what's going to be innovative in 20 years from now. So you have to have an R&D process and a mindset that you're continuously refreshing your products and services that you provide to the market. And so you've got to anticipate these megatrends. You know, what are the next megatrends that I didn't talk to you about? What's the next, you know, what's it going to look like in 2050? What does that look like, and how can we be prepared for that? Because you might imagine that, you know, a company the size of Siemens doesn't turn on a dime. So you have to plan, you have to think ahead, you have to have strategic orientation to really allow the right types of innovation to be created. Because, you know, in certain types of jobs, I guess, you're allowed the luxury of just innovating for innovation's sake. In Siemens, we innovate because we want to create a product in the end. So there's some type of triage that you're always doing around where is the future of the world, and how can I make interesting products that fit into that somehow. So after showing you our values, I just wanted to, I'm not even going to speak to these slides. I just wanted to show you that I think Siemens takes its responsibility to the world and to the community very seriously. So we have a number of things that go on in terms of disaster relief and helping the community and this kind of thing. So for example, in Haiti, and now it's Japan, Siemens actually contributes 100% on every dollar that any Siemens employee gives to disaster relief. So just over the last weeks, a mail was out about Japan, and every dollar that any employee contributes will go to the relief efforts in Japan. We're also very involved in developing the schools and encouraging young people of all ages to get interested in science, get interested in engineering and math, so that they become good potential citizens of the world. These deep technical skills are tough. I mean, I really admire all of you that are sitting in this room. I was in engineering school, and yeah, it's not easy. So, but there are a lot of people, I guess, a lot of young people out there that aren't necessarily motivated to be sitting in a room like this, and we need to get them young. So we try to encourage interest in math and science in the early years. So, in terms of what are the kinds of guys that Siemens is looking to hire? What are the kinds of people we need for our future to make sure that we are equipped? And I think this sort of summarizes it. People that can somehow think about the context of the work they're doing so that they can see how their piece fits into the whole are very rare, and they're very valuable to us. If you're, content to sit in your cubicle and flip your calendar over every day and just sort of do what you're told to do, okay, I guess you'll have a job if you do that piece well, but you will never be in any type of position of leadership at all, even team lead, much less, a VP or something like this. So we need people who are willing to look beyond their boundaries of their current task, figure out how what they do impacts others, how they can change what they do to make it better for others outside of their organization. How do you really, how you push these topics out somehow becomes a ripple effect. So if you are suddenly looked at as someone who understands the whole picture rather than your job, you're constantly called upon to assist with problem solving, or, hey Jack, here's a problem, how do we do this? And if you're able to think creatively in innovative ways, not be stuck into your little channel, this is really the first step in leadership. Then it comes to more topics like, leading and encouraging others to think the same way. Because as you heard in my remarks, change, really we're talking in some way about change. We're talking about always changing. And so you can never be complacent and sit where you are and think that this task or this process or this way of doing things is okay. It's got to keep changing. So part of this is about expanding, it's about questioning. Why am I doing this? Seems very unproductive. Why don't we do it another way? And you're always looking for the next challenge, the next question to answer. How can I make it better? How can I help others to make it better? Looking outside yourself. When you get into an organization as big as Siemens, there's politics just like there are in every other kind of situation. The people who somehow rise to the top are people that really somehow are selfless and are not looking out for their own, feathering their own nest, but are really looking to, how can I make a difference? How can I contribute? And I think people like this, even if they don't rise in the organization, I think they get a lot of self-fulfillment by knowing that they have done what they can to make a major contribution to their company. And these are the kinds of people we're looking for. People that are passionate, people who care, people who want to make a difference, and who want to help further the goals of Siemens. So it's really about, we have, passion sounds probably not a good word, but I mean, it's about being passionate, about being caring, and about being performing. It's not enough just to care, you've got to actually execute. So you've got to have the right perspective, and you've got to execute. So these are just, I'd love to explore that aspect of it a little further in the Q&A, but I should probably stop talking so much. So that's the end of my formal remarks, and I'd love to answer questions.
How much does character and perhaps personality play in leading a group of people?
I think it's almost the essence. You know, I mean, I'm a perfect example. Well, maybe that's. I know very little about IT. I mean, and it's somehow about leadership qualities and characteristics. So it's somehow about being able to get the right things out of people and how to be effective with people. And in a leadership position, it really has very little to do with knowing the technology. It has more to do with asking the right questions, probing, grilling. You know, one of my famous remarks is, you know, I'm not the expert, but what about this? What about that? I mean, have you thought about this? And, you know, most of the time they'll have a great answer, but sometimes they'll say, oh, you know, good point, Christy. And so I think it really is about characteristic. At a leader, you know, I read a great book that somebody, I don't know, might have been a UCF guy gave me, but it was something to do with the talent pipeline. And it has to do with how your job changes over time as you advance into higher levels of responsibility. And so at the beginning stages, you want to be a technical expert with some level, some layer, let's say, of leadership, you know, exhibiting itself. But the further you go up into the food chain, the more the technical capabilities become less important and the more the leadership characteristics come in. And you know, when you get up to some type of board level or so, you're not even really interested in people leadership capabilities. You're more about deal making and working with foreign governments. You saw a lot of foreign leaders in these, you know, so people at that level, they're not worrying about leading people. They're worried about negotiating with, you know, with Putin or so. So I think the needs change over time, but in general, I think having the ability to see the possibilities and to question the people who are giving you the input, to get them to see the possibilities, to help them make decisions, to help them make choices. This is very valuable.
In any way between cultures, like when you go to another country, do your leadership qualities have to adjust to the culture there, or is it the same across?
No, you have to adjust. It's difficult because, especially if you're entering a country where you're not familiar with the culture, and you should not underestimate the impact that has. So I do modify my behavior depending on where I am. It also has a bit to do with how intensively you've worked with those guys over time. So it evolves over time. So my primary other contact is Germany, of course. And in the beginning days, we spent a lot of time trying to figure each other out, and a lot of sort of confusion about why are you doing it that way? Why are you thinking that way? Because it's a different thought process. It's a different way to get to the end result. It's a different notion about levels of intensity. You know, I can remember the first year or so, you get these very deliberate mails, you know, Christy, why haven't you yet done this? I was expecting this yesterday. Sincerely, blah. And I'd be like, whoa, you know? Because, you know, our way would be, hi, Jürgen, how was your weekend? You owed me, you know, I thought we agreed that you would get me this by Monday, and I haven't seen it. Maybe I missed it in my mail, or, you know, maybe you tried to call but didn't see it. Could you let me know the status? Love, Christy, you know? So it took a while, you know, and you have to adopt some middle ground, or a way that, or with people you work with closely, you kind of discuss how do we interact together. And a lot of those rough spots have worked their way out now, because now the Germans and the Americans in Siemens have been working together for 12 years. So, you know, the people I work with closely, you don't think about it anymore. But definitely, and especially when I go into a new country, like if you go into the Asian countries, for example, you have to kind of remind yourself, I'm in Asia, and it's different. So you absolutely need to understand the culture as best you can. You'll never be in that skin, but you absolutely need to understand it as best you can and modify your behavior accordingly. And then there's just the basics of language. You know, I'm very fortunate that most of the German guys I'm dealing with speak excellent English, and it's gotten even better over time, over the 12 years. But you shouldn't forget that it is their second language. Things can be misinterpreted. And also the thing that one of my guys pointed out to me at one point that I guess I didn't appreciate is it's tiring. It's physically exhausting for them, because they're somehow doing this flip in their brain, and if they're with you, these are my guys that are, you know, Germans that are working for me, and we're having like a staff meeting all day, and by the end of the day, I'm exhausted because my brain is having to keep flipping between English and German, and it's just tiresome. So realize that by the end of the day, you may be ready to go on and, you know, talk more, but I can't talk anymore. I'm done, you know. So it is very important to be culturally sensitive in terms of the way people think, the way they work, and then the social mores too. You don't want to be impolite or perceived as impolite. So you need to understand things like in Asia, you take the business card with two hands, and you know, these types of things that are, you know, you just have to know. You have to learn them.
How has that changed over the past, you know, 2 to 3 years that you can now be considered such a model?
We actually talk among ourselves on what the phenomena was that caused us to be so focused on compliance that that it got done so quickly, all of the measures that we put in place, and why we can't apply that same thing to just the normal life. But the compliance topic was so serious and became threatening to the very livelihood of Siemens that it was not a democratic process. I mean, part of organizations, it is somehow a democratic process. You know, everybody gets an opinion, you talk about it, you reach consensus, and you go do something. The compliance topic was not democratic. People at the very top decided on a program within a couple of weeks. They decided on how it was going to be executed. We spent a ton of money. I mean, we'll never know. I mean, lots. With lawyers. I mean, at one time there were 1,000 lawyers or something. I mean, just incredible mass of people all focused. And so I remember it very well. It was December in Erlangen, and the compliance guys that had the program in mind came, and all of my management team was forced to sit there. And they basically said, this is mandatory, not subject to input. We're going to do this, and it's going to be done by this date, and here's what we're doing. And you know, some venturous people in the rows back would ask a few questions, and they were quickly shut down. It's like, this is too important. We're not going to all figure out the optimum way, and maybe if you do it this way, you'll save a few $1,000,000 or any of this. We've decided, we're doing it, shut up and do it. And if it's a topic like that, it was a good way to get it done. And I can't tell you, I mean, I spent, a third of my time, I'd say all the IT community spent a third of its time building very robust tools and KPIs to track all kinds of stuff, you know, and we still manage it to this day. So things like, maybe this is a little too detailed, but things like segregation of duties, you know, where a guy that creates a purchase order can't be the one who gets the money, you know, in the end. Those types of segregation of responsibility across Siemens. There were 43 rules about things that could not be done by the same person to avoid that someone could create a need for something and then also get the need for it, you know what I mean? Get paid for it, which is, all of this is now in. All of our computer systems worldwide have these tools embedded in them that will not allow a person to do that. And it cost, I mean, within just my organization, it was a $50 million kind of thing. And then you extend that to Siemens, and then you pay for all those lawyers we had. It was huge, it was a lot. So if you want to do something, now is it perfect? No, but it's done and it's in. So A little more of that, I would say, could be helpful in just your day-to-day activity, but you wouldn't want that as your normal. You wouldn't want to work for a company like that, you know, where your input was not valued, because it wasn't. It was not necessary, and we had to fix it, and we had to fix it fast. It's a bit, you know, I was in. It's maybe this is a complete aside, but if you look at the difference between China and India. India is democratic, and China is communist, obviously. You go to China, and the parts that are well organized, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, strangeness there, but if you look at China, they have infrastructure, they have, you know, clean water for the most part, I mean, kind of. I mean, you don't want to drink it, but it's, you can shower in it, let's put it that way. But let's just say it's much more organized. You go to India, and it's the most chaotic place I've ever been. You just want to get out, and you just want to go take a shower. You know, you just want to get out. But they're democratic, so they spend a lot of time discussing, well, should we put the bridge here, or could we put the bridge there, or do we want to take down this housing complex to put a park there? You know, they discuss it. Well, as a result, there's very little going on there. They're way, way behind in infrastructure. So there's some kind of balance that we as you as future managers need to achieve between the autocratic kind of approach and the fully democratic approach, and somewhere in the middle where you get the best ideas of smart people in between, but then you go execute is somehow the right balance, I guess.
What are some of the actions or maybe the values you've held dear along that path that you feel have really helped you to progress?
You know, maybe this may even almost get into the woman thing, which, and I really don't want to go there. But you know, I think you've somehow got to be willing to subjugate yourself. You know, men have big egos, I think. Some of them. I'm just speak for my husband. I won't speak to any of you gentlemen. You somehow have to be willing to listen and gather inputs from a lot of places, and then be prepared to make a decision. If you're not willing to listen, and you're not willing to surround yourself with people who are potentially much smarter than you are because you're somehow intimidated by them or afraid they'll take your job or something, this is a no-go for me. So I mean, to me, my success, if you can call it that, is I've always sought to surround myself with really great people that I trusted. I trusted from a integrity standpoint, so if they tell me something, I can take it to the bank. If I ever find a person that somehow I've inherited on a staff that I've gotten and they're not that kind of person, I have removed them. I won't work with someone I don't trust. So that's just sort of, you know, basic. But if you trust them and you get the best people you can find for the jobs you have, and then you listen to what they're telling you, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to be a good leader then. You just, you know, basically do what they think is best because they're the experts somehow. So somehow you just have to, I think my success is somehow I can manage my way through that, and I don't take it, I mean, my guys are telling me all the time that was the stupidest thing that they've ever heard when I have some idea, you know, and they know they can do that. I think it's somehow creating an atmosphere where you get the input. You know, if you're somehow, you think you know it all and you're the boss and you're going to do it your way anyway, then the input dries up. So I think you just, you know, decisions are around gathering the facts, as many as you can, and going forward, and you need the input.
Almost micromanaging their people too much, and in that situation it's better to generally just kind of step back and let your people do what they need to do, and then just see what comes of it.
I have that tendency. It's easy to do because you know, it's back to this pipeline discussion I talked about. If you've done that job yourself and now you're promoted and someone else is supposed to be doing it, you somehow feel that you can contribute to helping them. So it's something you really have to force yourself not to do if that's your inclination, and let people have their head, so to speak, and learn from their own mistakes. You know, I think the best you can do at that point is offer them counter proposals or other things they could consider or try. Let them go away and figure out if that works for them themselves. And you know, you have to, especially with, say, you know, a certain level of, you know, people in the younger part of your workforce, they have to learn on their own. I mean, you can't say, you know, if this project is late, your customers are going to get really upset with you, therefore you need to do it exactly this way. I mean, you say, you know, you need to get this straightened out. You can't be late. Here's what I've tried before. Take it, see if it works, or come up with something better on your own, but it can't be late, you know? So, but there is a natural tendency, especially if you've come up through the ranks. For me, it's a lot nice that I was in IT in my youth, and then I moved to the business for 15 years out of IT, and then I moved back. So my guys know perfectly well that I can't, you know, I can't design a web app or anything else. You know, my days were, my master's thesis is a box of punched cards. You probably don't even know what that is. Anybody know what punched cards are? Okay, 4 people, yeah. You know. So yeah, it's a natural inclination, but you've got to resist it. And I'd say managers that don't resist it, you know, if you talk about this hierarchy of authority, managers that don't resist it will never get past being the direct manager of that guy. They won't go any further. So if you can't let go, you'll never advance beyond being a direct line manager of that task because you're too deep into it and you don't have time to think strategically.
Have you found specific resources that have helped you in developing that sense, that understanding, or has it all been experiential?
I'd say the biggest learnings have been experiential. You know, I've been to classes, and you know, you do the circle on how far apart they are from the culture you came from and all of that. But I'd say the biggest learnings have been experiential, and being with someone in that country. You know, the first time in the country, I think this is when the biggest learnings come because you're basically ignorant, and talking to whoever's your guide at that point about the proper way to behave and the proper way to act, and that's where you get kind of the real input as opposed to the academic input. So I think most of what, and I can't profess to be an expert really. I mean, I think I could be considered some type of an experiential expert on the German culture, but beyond that, I'm not that familiar except what I've learned in books. But I think the learnings are more subtle than, you know, the books always paint it really black and white. You're this way, you're this way. And at the end, we're all people. So within this room, you have huge diversity in the way you deal with things and the way you think and your approaches. I mean, so you can't just label an American as this is a stereotypical American. And it's the same with every other culture. So, you know, even within my German staff, I have, I guess, seven out of my 9 direct reports are German. They're all very unique people. I mean, they're people, right? So they're all very unique, and some are more, let's say, stereotypical German than others, and some are very, I would say, particularly those who have lived globally or lived in the U.S. are more, somewhere in between a German and an American kind of typical guy, But for me, the biggest learnings have been more subtle. You know, things like, I can remember that one of the first encounters in Germany when I was doing this service business process harmonization around the globe. So I hire a consultant and I go over and we get all the managers that are working in this process, and they're all German, and we bring them to the room. So I've got me and an American consultant, and we've set up a whole framework about how we're going to proceed with this workshop to get answers out of these guys. And I get up and give my little introduction and, you know, talk about how the day's going to look and all of this kind of stuff. And they're all kind of looking at me, and then one of them, I know all these guys really well now, so I wish I could remember which of them said this, or because we would just laugh about it now. But one of them piped up and said, well, you know, since all of us are German and you two are the only Americans, I would propose we conduct this workshop in German. So I'm like, okay, this is fine. But if this makes you more comfortable, because I know it's easier for you to discuss between yourself and reach, you know, agreement in German, but I would appreciate if just every, you know, 10 minutes or so, you'd check back with me and just let me know, summarize what you've discussed for the last 10 minutes. They said, okay, we'll do that. So then they, and then someone says, okay, we just said this. I said, okay, great. Then they do it, you know. After about 45 minutes, they just flipped to English. It was a test somehow, you know. Their English is perfect. They're no problem with English. None. These are managers, you know. And you know, and so you learn things like that that you can never be prepared for. I'm not sure what lesson I learned actually there. It's just that be flexible, compromise, and in the end, you know, and all of those guys are my friends now. They were just testing, seeing what would happen. I guess it was kind of an adventure for them somehow.
What if you've traveled to many places and you have understanding of other cultures? How would you put that on your resume when you have other things that take priority, let's say job experience?
But I would say this is a big one if you can wedge that in, because for Siemens, a company like Siemens, the people that are most promotable and most apt to get new positions are those that are willing to be mobile. And this is an actual criteria in terms of your performance and your, let's say not your performance, but your promotability is very much a function of how mobile you are and whether you're willing to go to other countries. So for Siemens, if we saw something in your resume that indicated that you had traveled and were comfortable in different cultures, that would be a really green flag. You know, that would be, oh, looks good, let's check her out for Siemens. I can't say that this is the same for others. I mean, but for Siemens, a company like Siemens that's global and where you want that diversity of experience. I mean, how cool is it if someone has worked in 4 countries in sort of generally the same area, it can bring all that different diverse thinking and different ways of doing it into their mind and into what they offer to Siemens. I mean, this is tremendous. So this is big on a resume for Siemens. Find a way, you know, I worked on this project in this country and blah, 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 you know. Find a way to make it flow in there.
Or what if it's just traveling and cultural understanding?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe put that in your hobby section, you know. Do they allow a hobby section now? Is that, I don't know what the latest standard for resumes is, but, you know, special interests, or I would find a way, you know. I mean, if you speak multiple languages, this is huge.